Earth, home of the humans. Humans have a lot of questions about their home. How did they get here? How do they take care of it? Some dedicate their whole life to answering these questions through a process they like to call science. Through three main approaches of science communication, their research can be shared with other human beings. Let's take a closer look. Meet Sophie. Sophie likes to drink tea. But what is this? Plastic? Sophie wasn't expecting that. How did the plastic get here? She worries about plastic pollution and wants to know more. Where could she find more information about this? The bookstore. In the bookstore, Sophie finds an informative book on plastic waste. The book is an example of the science literacy approach. It communicates to Sophie certain scientific findings as if they are facts. Whilst reading this book, through passive engagement with science, Sophie develops an interest for this topic and learns about plastic pollution. Sophie found this to be an easy, accessible and informative way to learn more about plastic. It encourages her to come up with new questions and seek for more answers. However, Sophie feels a bit disconnected from the science. There is little room for interaction and exchange of knowledge. Also, she still does not know anything about the methods and limitations of the research itself. Sophie's search to find more answers goes on. At home, she turns on the radio and hears an interview by a professor in which he gives insight into the methods of his research on microplastics in plants.
Hoe zo'n plant, of die ze opnemen, dan kan je ze eigenlijk niet terugvinden in zo'n plant. Dus wat we dan doen, is we nemen een stukje plastic. Nou, die vind je niet terug, maar daar doen we een label aan. Dan doen we iets aan dat we wel makkelijk kunnen terugmeten.
This approach is related to the public understanding of science, which is aimed at reflecting on science as a process. When listening to the interview through passive engagement with science, Sophie understands scientific methodology and reasoning. She can comprehend how science is being done and what challenges come with doing science.
Klinkt heel makkelijk. Het is veel werk, maar dat is een relatief goede manier om te kijken hoe die plastic zich bewegen in zo'n plant.
The pro of this approach is that Sophie now understands what goes on behind the scenes and she feels more included in the process and its uncertainties. On the other hand, there is still no interaction between her and the scientist. There is only one-way communication. Sophie keeps on looking and searches for local projects in her city to participate in. Sophie finds a project called the Grachtwacht, the canal cleanup project in Leiden. She signs up for the upcoming Sunday. This initiative is an example of the public engagement with science model. During this project, Sophie is connecting with and practicing science by actively participating in science, in this case by collecting trash, causing her to feel more included in science and now really understanding the process behind it. She feels like she's contributing to the research and feels closer to scientists. An additional benefit of this specific project is that while the trash is being used for research, Sophie is simultaneously helping to clean the city and thus actively aid in the cleanup and prevention of plastic pollution. A con of this approach is that it costs more effort and time, which can make the threshold higher than the previously mentioned passive science communication processes. Furthermore, this form of citizen science, when relied upon, may put too much responsibility on the individual. Thus, this approach depends on the active participation of citizens. Sophie wonders how a program can make sure that enough citizens keep showing up to help. She does not see herself doing this every Sunday.
So you really need dedicated volunteers, and to help them stay active you really have to find out their motivation and what motivates them and how they can be involved also in other ways. Maybe they don't always like to go with the cleanup, but maybe help with the research part or the communication part. So that's a stage where we are in now after 5 years to really keep them motivated and engaged with the project and feel like they are part of the whole project and not only guiding the cleanup. So that's a nice challenge we're dealing with now.
So, we learned that different approaches of communicating science to the broader public can have different benefits and shortcomings. Through availability of all three approaches, Sophie has been able to answer many of her questions and explore her place within the world of science.